Okay, I'd like to start the MTA Railroad Committee meeting for the month of December. Before I start, I'd like to welcome our newest board member, Charles Mortler, who's sitting down the end. Glad to have you as part of our family. First of all, public comments. I think we have one public speaker, Murray Bowden.
Well, you wonder why I always dress in black, why you never see bright colors on my back, and why does my appearance seem to have a somber tone? Well, there's a reason for the things that I have on.
Well, you've seen me dressed this way for a long time. What you just heard was part of my iPad. Why is that important? Because all these papers that you issue should be written in electronic book form. So I can have all those papers for today's meetings and the rest of the meetings on my iPad or my computer or my phone or any other e-book reader. We're talking about change. What has to happen around here? I was at the Port Authority meetings on last Tuesday, and board member Silverman asked, how could you have a $3 billion with a B overrun? And nobody noticed. Held up my little finger, but of course they didn't recognize me there. And so we went to the board meeting, and they gave me my few minutes, and I said, I'll give you the answer. There's a line wrong on the George Washington Bridge. It should be a dotted line, and it's a broken line. I've been talking to them for about 4 months, 5 months, a year. They can't correct it. The inability to look at a little point like that results in a $3 billion cost overrun at the World Trade Center. Governor Christie just pulled the ARC tunnel. I was upset because I've been involved with that since 2 or 3 years ago. But he pulled it because of cost overruns and the inability to address it properly. And over here, there's a similar situation. I've stood up here for you any number of times and said, how don't you take out the ticket booth of the Hartsdale train station? 4 times I've had an appointment with President Permit, and 4 times he's canceled it. 3 strikes and you're out. What is the inability of Metro-North to understand the space belongs to the commuter and not to an empty ticket booth? Tens of thousands of dollars have been spent on the train horns. Why doesn't somebody stop and say, let's go back and ask why we're still blowing train horns? 100 years ago, you walked across the platform, the tracks, and the train blew the horn so you knew it was coming. Hartsdale Station and a bunch of others are all high-level stations. There are no stairs to walk down. The trains don't have stairs to get off anymore. And yet we're blowing the train horns. Everybody's standing on a platform with their iPod things in their ears, and instead of warning us over the public address system where everybody on the platform could hear it, they blow a train horn half mile down the road, and they wake up the people. But the people standing on the platform can't hear it. So a $3 billion cost overrun on a World Trade Center is the same as the inability to address the issue why we can't give the space to the commuters and why we still blow train horns. President Permit, when can we meet to discuss this item? I was there taking pictures of the crowded station. They called the police, and the police came down and took me out of the station. Now, I had a discussion with the Greenberg chief of police last Wednesday night and a bunch of other policemen standing around. So when I come down there to cut the door off there, whose jurisdiction is it to arrest me? Inside the station, is it Greenberg or MTA? Well, if it's MTA, gentlemen, I'd like to make an appointment for Thursday morning at 11 o'clock to cut the hinges off the door in the Hartsdale station. I don't want to embarrass the Greenburgh Police Department. So can we arrange, and if that's not a good time, I'll be glad to arrange a different time for your men to come down and arrest me rather than the Greenburgh Police. Will you take me to Greenburgh to book me or take me to New York City to book me? Makes no difference. The New York City judge said, "Hey, Mr. Bowden, keep it up. We like what you're doing." And dismissed the last time you arrested me downstairs. So I know what the judge in New York City is going to tell me. Keep it up. This is a time of change. You cannot do it the way you've always done it. We're in trouble because you've always done it this way. When are you going to stop? You haven't got the guts to meet one man who represents his grandchildren? I'm all by myself, but I do it on the record. Every meeting I have is recorded. This is recorded. It's there. The Port Authority is there. 21 minutes into the meeting, you can look at the last one and you can see exactly what I said. I'm on the record every single time.
Mr. Bowden, please. Thank you. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes of November the 15th. Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Work plan? We have a new work plan for 2011. We've all been given an opportunity to look at it. Any changes, deletions? Otherwise, can I get a motion to accept? Second? Any opposed? All in favor? Carried. Okay, Howard.
Okay, the customer satisfaction survey. I want to mention for the committee on the work plan that as we talked about over the summer, Long Island Railroad and Metro North have been working together to make everything consistent, both reports and work plans. Next year's work plan, we are successful. It is consistent between the two railroads. We also have later on some of the financial reports we've now made consistent. So we're very close to doing what we said we'd be doing all along about standardizing the reports between us. With that, let me start on the survey. I'll go first, then Helena will be following me. Basically, we're going to give you the results of the customer survey. The survey was done in June 2010. It was done across all the MTA. Go to the next slide. All the MTA agencies. We used a consistent definition across all the agencies for the first time. We modified our scale slightly to what we had previously done, which makes it difficult to compare this year to the previous year. Going forward, we'll now have a new baseline. The other thing I want to mention on the survey is that this was done at a time when we were implementing service reductions across the MTA, and so that may well have impacted some of the ratings. In terms of the highlights across the MTA, first, with respect to real-time information and service information, customers value it. 95% of the people were satisfied with the subway countdown clocks. A large majority of subscribers were satisfied with the email service alerts. Second overarching conclusion is that on-time performance is highly correlated with customer satisfaction. Example here is given us for the Long Island Railroad, showing how close those two numbers are. The third thing is that frontline employee performance was rated well by all customers. Continuing, safety and security is rated well by customers, and in the case of the subway, this is a major turnaround from the 1980s when security and perceived lack of security was a major ridership barrier. Over 90% of the people were satisfied with Easy Pass performance and how the billing and sign-up works. The ratings of a value of ride for money range from 74% satisfied on Metro North to 62% on the local bus, and temperatures on trains and buses rated well. So then now moving on to Metro North specifically. Metro North received high marks from our customers overall. We will go through what those ratings are and then talk about places where we did not rate as well, what our plans are to address those issues. So we start overall, 93% of the customers are satisfied with Metro North. You can see a couple of things I want to point out here. One is that there's constant high performance across all markets. So that's very important, is a consistency of service delivery ranging between 92 to 95%. Secondly, that the percentage who's very satisfied is quite high. It ranges between 30 to 40% across all these markets, and that's something we look at very carefully. It's an important measure as well as overall satisfaction. Next one. You can see here something that the Metro North members have known for a while, but let me point out is that satisfaction is highest on the Harlem and Hudson lines. The New Haven line has lagged for a number of years. The satisfaction there will start to increase following the delivery of the new M8s. And one of the things that's really quite striking is that on the Upper Harlem and Lower Hudson line, over 50% of the people were very satisfied. So we have some groups of people who are extremely satisfied, and I point out that that's largely in places where the M7s are operating, and so we think new equipment, when it gets to New Haven, will certainly affect those people's attitudes as well. With regard to service quality, we've got high levels of satisfaction for basic train service, and you can see here it's all between 91 to 93%. Very satisfied is ranging between 35 to 45% in these categories. Here again we're seeing the New Haven line being lower than the other two lines. Again, total satisfaction very high on the Hudson and Harlem lines, almost 50%. The New Haven line, just take a minute, a little more to talk about it. The New Haven line, as you may know, is the largest line, passenger line in the United States. It's the most complicated operation with cars changing its power source in the middle of operation. And at the same time, it has the oldest cars and the oldest power system of, in some places in the United States. Parts of it date back 100 years at this point. And so once we get the new cars coming in to replace the M2s, that will should move things up significantly. The second piece is once the catenary replacement project in Connecticut is completed, that will also move things up for two reasons, in that the reliability of the new system is much better, and secondly, Metro North is now operating the New Haven line with major amounts of its trackage out, which means that if something goes wrong, there is where we typically have 4 tracks, we now have 2 tracks, and so when something goes wrong, it causes significant reliability problems. So once that's done, we believe that those numbers will go up dramatically up towards the Harlem and Hudson. One of the things that we're very proud of is how customers are satisfied with Metro North's frontline employees. You can see the ratings are all very high. I do want to point out this is the ratings for the employees is second highest after Grand Central, so that's a good crowd to be with. And also that we have spent an inordinate amount of time focused on employee professionalism and customer service training. It's paying off with these numbers. The one I will point out is that we haven't been very satisfied for train conductors is over 50, it's 53%. And that's something we're very proud of and the good work that all our train crews do. The other thing I point out is actually when it comes to frontline employees, there's no difference between the New Haven line and the Harlem-Hudson line, despite the fact that the people like the Harlem-Hudson much better. Again, speaks to the consistency of the efforts of the employees. On-board conditions, you can see here very clearly when you look at the right on the New Haven line, that brings everything down. And again, a lot of these things, particularly on-board conditions, this will all change with the M8s coming. With respect to communication, we see that over 90% of people are satisfied, as you'd expect. During service disruptions, people aren't happy, so their ratings have gone down. One point I do want to make is that when we have 5 stations that have full real-time information on Metro North. When we looked at the ratings on those stations, where people can find out to the minute what's going on, they were significantly better than all other stations. So it points out we're moving in the right direction in our real-time program. The next one. As in terms of security, you can see very high numbers. Vast majority of people feel safe and secure on Metro North. With respect to the boarding station, almost 90% people are satisfied. The one outlier is the parking. So only 65% are satisfied. Again, this is a case where the vast majority of parking is not controlled by Metro North. It's controlled by the localities. We do have some programs to improve parking in a couple of places we'll talk about in the budget. Grand Central, You can see that 97% of people are satisfied with Grand Central. With respect to the restrooms, that's the one really lowest rated area. And again, when you really think about it, it's not surprising because Grand Central functions far more than a train terminal. It's really a major destination now for all of New York City, and those are the people who are using facilities, and there's a whole bunch of congestion and overcrowding that occurs, particularly in the bathrooms, because there's so many people coming in to eat or to visit there. Later on, I will mention, by the way, in the presentation, what we're doing to address that. Now, west of Hudson, 86% of the customers are satisfied. The results are lower than they are east of Hudson. One of the issues here, we'll go to the next slide as well. So we continue to work with New Jersey Transit to improve service, but one of the issues is that particularly the lowest rated factor has historically been and continues to be train service on the Port Jervis line. It is a 65-mile single-track line, and so it's very hard to improve service in any type of efficient manner on that line. So finally, in terms of what we are doing to address these findings, we have had a long-standing history of, we always use this to drive down into the organization different improvement programs to try to make ourselves better where our customers tell us we need to. One, on the New Haven line, we'll be delivering the M8 cars. Talked about that. That'll greatly improve service quality. Maintaining good on-time performance. We'll maintain our focus there, and again, M8s will improve on-time performance. Better information to customers during service disruptions. During the budget, I'll talk about, we have a whole program underway to improve our real-time information delivery. With respect to parking, we'll have 2 major facilities open up next year. Cortland, it's with 750 spaces, and Fairfield Metro, which is a CDOT project, Connecticut DOT, with 1,400 spaces. And then finally, with regard to cleaner restrooms, we have 2 things underway. One, we have a program to improve the restrooms at all the outlying stations. And secondly, we're doing some more focus groups to look at restrooms, cleanliness on board trains to see what people want and what we can do to make improvements. So that covers our part of this presentation.
Any questions for Howard before we go to Elena?
Just in general, what was the last time this was done?
2008.
So it's done every 2 years?
No, it's normally, Jeff, it's normally every year, but last year we took off so we could get all the scales consistent across all the agencies. So we basically had a 1-year hiatus. It's usually done every year.
So will you be tracking this over time?
Yes. Yes, it's just we can't track this one compared to previous ones because of a scale change.
Okay, Elena.
Okay. Oops.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Why do you need a focus room for bathrooms? A dirty bathroom is a dirty bathroom.
So, fair question. Part of the issue is that many of the bathrooms that are poorly rated, when we go out and inspect them, are actually in pretty good shape. And so there's a bit of a disconnect. And so what we think is that there are certain facilities or design issues that we could use input from people that they may be looking for something that we're not providing, and we'll see what we can do to fix that. They may also, sometimes we find that it may turn out that the problem is on trains that have short turns in Grand Central, which we're not always picking up. So it's just another way to find out what people think.
Hello, I have one short request. Yeah. The whole presentation was east of Hudson and west of Hudson, and I understand it really is operated like 2 different railroads. One's with New Jersey Transit. But it would be good to see, since it's one organization, to see what the overall customer satisfaction is just for Metro North total. I didn't see a slide for that. In other words, east of Hudson, west Hudson combined.
Right. Yeah, Ira, we've always separated them out in part because there's a huge disparity in volume. That the west of Hudson is about maybe 1%, 2% of the riders. So, in essence, to answer your question, if you look at east of Hudson, that's going to tell you what the total would be.
West of Hudson impact would be nothing on the...
Well, it's tiny because it's 1 or 2% of the population.
Okay, Elena?
I would like to highlight one of the groups that was very strong about a uniform survey instrument was PCAC. And one member of the Long Island Commuter Council actually has a lot of experience with polling and felt very strongly that, to get uniform results, it was worth the hiatus year, get the survey instrument down to one that we could all work with and have year-to-year comparisons. And that included New York City Transit as well. So with that, let me begin by noting that 89% of all our customers were satisfied with Long Island Railroad, while off-peak as well as reverse-peak customers tended to have slightly higher ratings, which is interesting because, of course, one of our weaknesses in our operation is reverse-peak. We generally think that they exhibit satisfaction because we continue to offer the off-peak fare for the service that we are able to offer. The key drivers for high satisfaction scores were in employee performance, courtesy and responsiveness, personal security and safety, and our signage. Next slide. Hempstead branch received the highest score, serving 14,000 customers, followed by Far Rockaway and Montauk. Two of our lowest scoring branches are Oyster Bay and Port Jeff. As you will recognize, that's diesel territory, and we are focused, of course, on trying to improve the diesel performance and give more reliable service to those customers. Oyster Bay is a challenge, and we are looking at the Mineola operation in 2011 to see if there are any improvements we can make there. The next slide, Long Island Railroad maintains high satisfaction among its customers. However, we are always looking for ways to improve. As you can see, that the overall train service satisfaction is matched very closely to on-time performance. So if the railroad's train service performance improves, the overall satisfaction will go up as well. Our year-to-date on-time performance is 92.6%, which is below our annual goal of the 95.1%. As you know, this year we've had some significant challenges ranging from the Hall Tower fire that resulted after a major flood at Jamaica. We had Labor Day weekend impacted by a threatened hurricane, and then on September 16th we had a tornado that affected our service. The only thing that hasn't affected our service in terms of natural phenomena was an earthquake about 2 weeks ago. I am pleased to say that did not impact us. We're working hard on OTP strategies, and I'll talk later about that, particularly with Amtrak. Next slide. Employees remain one of our greatest assets of our operation. Customers express high satisfaction with our frontline employees. I, of course, always express to this committee how proud I am of the work the employees do, particularly in these very challenging situations that we've had this year. They've come through for us. And then, of course, we had the 2 weekends for the Jamaica Switch Modernization Project. While that impacted the amount of service we were able to offer, the service we did offer was extremely reliable, and again, the employees just did a fabulous job. One of the areas that we generally get high ratings and noticed a little bit of a change this year was with ticket sellers, and we think that was influenced by the ticket windows that we closed this year. Onboard conditions. 80% or more of our customers are satisfied with the onboard conditions. The exception is restrooms. Our onboard restrooms continues to be a challenge for us. One of the issues is getting contact time to clean up restrooms. You know, the trains go out in the AM with a clean restroom, and the issue is how to get any additional cleaning time as the trains are used throughout the day. We're going to look at those cleaning cycles and try to determine if we can increase the contact time for improving restroom servicing. And on Customer information and communications, this has been one of my priorities, as you're aware. At Penn Station, we installed message boards to provide train time updates. Almost 98 of our boarding stations now have the audio-visual paging system, electronic signs that provide train time updates. We're working, of course, on how to make that system more flexible when we have a service disruption. At this time, primarily we have to say, go to our website, or we have to have a generic message about delays. The system can't handle individual messages by station. And we're continuing actually to work on how to meld that system with the Penn Station system, which is different. That's Solari signs, AVPS is the outlying stations, and how to get those two systems to give the best reports for real-time train information is one of our challenges in 2011. I do want to note that, Cuckoo has worked extremely well. I think they're getting to their, millionth user. That's been a real plus for our operation. And, of course, we rely on our 24/7 public information office to issue frequent email alerts and to be able to update messages at Penn Station on the message boards. With regard to the rating, we did receive about 85% satisfied with the signage and the electronic signs. On customer security and safety, of course, one of our highest priorities always to maintain a safe and secure operation. The vast majority of our customers are very satisfied with the feeling of having a safe and secure journey on the railroad. One area of concern is security of cars parked at home boarding stations. MTA Police has reached out to Nassau and Suffolk Police during the year to try to target different parking lots that have had challenges with regard to vandalism, and we continue, I think, to see some results from that program. 90% are satisfied with their home station overall. We've worked on station rehabilitation throughout our capital programs. We hope that we will see capital program funding continued for the 2010-2014 program, where we have stations identified for major rehabilitation. Branch line managers have contributed, I think, to the high satisfaction of customers. They are out there and they are well known by our customers. Penn Station, we have about an 88% satisfied with the conditions of Penn. Restrooms there were rated lower, but over 70% satisfied. Penn Station, of course, is an area we monitor very closely. We did complete a restroom renovation, which improved the cleanliness rating up, considerably over the prior years where the restrooms were a challenge. Penn Station, of course, is, one of the largest utilized stations in North America with 3 operations, Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, and Long Island Railroad. We continue to look for a vision that will serve Penn Station for the future. And we'll be evaluating the impact of New Jersey's decision not to go forward with the ARC project and to try to evaluate what that means for Penn Station. Also, as Amtrak contemplates relocating some of its operations to Farley, it may give an opportunity to re-envision the way Penn looks and the way Penn operates. So that will be one of our challenges as we go forward. And we've tried to develop customer service initiatives that respond to those customer priorities. First and foremost, we need to improve our on-time performance, get past the challenges that we face this year, and start 2011 with enhanced OTP initiatives. Those will include working more closely with Amtrak and keeping our own employees very focused on situational awareness as they perform. We want to continue to upgrade technology, particularly during service disruptions. We work on the parking strategies for home boarding stations with several stations, Hicksville, Kew Gardens, Locust Valley, and Stony Brook, where we've had parking expansion initiatives. Again, we're very focused on the onboard restroom cleanliness. The challenge for us is to increase contact time for cleaning and ensuring that we have the right cycle for servicing toilets. And frequency of trains, we continue to monitor the demand for train service. This is an issue since we did go through a major service reduction this year. In particular, we'll be watching the Port Washington branch to make sure we can meet the demands. Any questions?
Helena, just 3 points. One is, would the results be different and would value be added if this survey were done by an external firm? Second, one question I'm surprised didn't appear is the question of the consumers, our riders' perception of value for service, especially given the recent increases in cost. And then the third is, one result I find anomalous is the Penn Station satisfaction result at 88% compared to Grand Central at 97%. I recognize there's a significant difference in the very satisfied, which is very high at Grand Central and relatively low at Penn Station, but that's anomalous to me. And it suggests either that some Penn Station respondents may be suffering from a Stockholm syndrome, because I can't believe that 88% of our customers are satisfied with Penn Station. Certainly I'm not, and people I speak to aren't. And I wonder whether we could tweak. It's anomalous to me.
Let me just address on the survey itself. It is distributed by non-employees. It's an independent contractor that we retain to do the distribution of the survey and to recollect it. And I do think that is important in terms of maintaining, objectivity and getting the results. With regard to value for service, I think we will face some challenges on that as we see the fare increase that goes into effect on December 30th.
But that, I'm sorry, Helena, but that question is not presented.
It is not presented,
Right.
and that's one I'll take back so
Okay.
that we can look at, can we address it in the next survey?
You actually have it at the front of the presentation. You should include it in any.
Just not sure.
Ratings of valuable ride for the money range.
Yeah, it does say that.
I just want to go back and look at the questions that support it. I think that the value was related to overall satisfaction.
Here it is.
And with regard to Penn Station versus Grand Central Terminal, I would say to you that, many of our customers are, they are used to Penn. And Penn is a very different dynamic than Grand Central. But you're right. We need to look forward to making improvements there.
Any other questions?
I gotta look at where that is.
When was the survey done for both railroads? What time period was this?
June 1st through June 17th,
Okay,
which for us was right after the May service reductions.
right.
Can we get the other questions and the questions?
Yes.
This is usually also on the internet, so I'm assuming that either the questions and answers or the presentations will be soon, right?
Yes.
So we will be able to see those questions.
Yeah, the original survey instrument, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Metro North Railroad, status of operations. Bob.
Good morning, everyone. The status of operations is outlined on page 16 in your agenda book. In November, we operated at 96.6%. This was below our goal of 97.7%. The Hudson line operated at 98.1%. The Harlem line was at 97.6%. And the New Haven line was at 95.1%, again, due to a lot of the multiple projects we have going on over there. All of our categories were below goal, with the exception of the weekend service, which ran at 98.1%, above our goal of 97.8%. In spite of that, of the 30 days in November, we operated below 95% only 4 times and once below 90%. That was actually on November the 8th, mainly due to terrible weather conditions resulted in a number of delays. 582 trains operated late out of 17,198 scheduled. 99.8% of our trips were completed, and 99.1% of our trains operated with a full consist. On the west of Hudson, we operated at 96.1% in November, which is below our goal of 96.3%. The Port Jervis was below goal, while the Pascack Valley was above goal. 64 trains operated late out of a total of 1,623. And in November, 99.5% of trips were completed. MDBF, that is outlined on page 17 in your agenda book. For October, our MDBF was 111,898 against a goal of 115,000. Our year-to-date MDBF still stands at 136,653. The M2s were low in the month of October. It was driven by a number of cars that had repeat intermittent failures, although they were unrelated. That caused a number of delays. Our triplet fleet continues to struggle with reliability issues. We had a couple of cars that failed a couple times, resulted in 4 or 5 delays. And the Genesis were below par. We had a couple of GE turbo failures. And we've actually, year-to-date with the GEs, we are below goal. Due to equipment blowers and turbo failures, and we're working with the GE as we speak to try to come up with root causes, and we hope to have a report sometime first quarter of 2011 with respect to those causes. And that's the report. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer.
I have a question as to the relevancy of the statistics. They are not broken down, nor are any of the other statistics of any of the other groups, as between rush hour service and non-rush hour service. It seems to me that there's a significant difference between a train being on time during the rush hour when people have to get to and from work and in non-rush hour periods. Is there a breakdown anywhere?
Yes.
Yes, there is. That was in the handout? Yeah, I think because of the date, apologize, but because of the date, the early date of the meeting, we didn't get it in the book. But that handout should have that because we calculate everything based on the different time periods.
Okay. Thank you.
And Long Island Railroads appears at page 71.
Thank you.
And normally you would see both reports in the book.
Any other questions for Bob? Okay. Kim?
Good morning. The financial report for October, which compares detailed results versus July plan, begins on page 20 in your committee book. All the details are there, and I will provide some highlights. Year-to-date October results continue to show additional improvement in revenues above that included in the mid-year July plan, and also further reduced or delayed expenditures. The month of October net deficit is $46.3 million and favorable versus the July plan by 9% or $4.6 million. Year-to-date October net deficit is $497.9 million and favorable versus July plan by 6% or $33 million. Year-to-date cash deficit is $282 million, favorable to the July plan by $52 million. What this equates to is that fare box revenues are $4 million higher, reflecting higher riderships. Other revenue receipts are $4 million higher, reflecting higher advertising revenues and higher net GCT retail revenues. And cash disbursements are $60 million lower, reflecting reduced expenditures or delays in expenditures. This is only partially offset by lower capital and other reimbursements of $17 million, also reflecting delayed project activity. Overall, our cost reduction efforts have shown higher ridership revenues and reduced expenditures have resulted in fare box operating ratio of 59.9% on page 31. This is 2.6% favorable versus July plan. 1.9% is due to higher fare box revenues, and the remaining 0.7% is due to lower expenditures. Also, year-to-date October cost per passenger is $11.23, favorable versus July plan by 22 cents. Most of this is due to lower expenditures of 14 cents. Now, at this time of the year, what I'd like to do is focus your attention to the October results against the November plan. That is shown on page 35 through 36. What we see is through October, we're on track to realize improvements versus the November plan. At this point right now, total revenues are favorable to the November plan, but $1.5 million. The vast majority is due to higher ridership, with also increased other revenues. Total expenses is favorable by $26.8 million. Non-cash expenditures accounts for $15 million of this favorability, and all other expenditures account for $12 million of the favorability. About $2 million is related to lower labor expenditures, and the remaining $10 million is due to lower non-labor expenditures. Overall, net deficit is favorable by $28.3 million. This concludes my report.
Any questions for Tim? Okay. Bob?
Good morning. The October ridership report is in your book starting on page 37. If you flip through it, you'll notice there's been some significant formatting changes. The two railroads been working for a few months to bring the reports into a consistent format. This is the first month with the new format for both Metro North and Long Island. On Friday, were emailed out the preliminary November numbers. I'm just going to summarize them. For Metro North, November ridership was up 2.2% in November versus 2009. Commutation ridership did very well. It was up 3.3% versus 2009. Non-com ridership was up 0.8%. Year-to-date for the 11 months, Metro North ridership is now up 1.4% compared to last year. And that breaks down to commutation ridership is up 0.5%, and non-com ridership is up 2.7%. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Have you called a bottom?
Excuse me?
Have you called a bottom?
I'm sorry.
Have you called a bottom and we're on our way up?
We'll see. So.
Tim?
Good morning. The capital program report begins on page 47. A couple of very quick highlights. Excuse me. At Rye, the East Overpass was placed in service on November 23rd, which allowed us to take the West Overpass out of service. And for our Sing Sing Creek and on-call drainage consultant, that project has been awarded and has begun. That will allow us to react quickly should we have any flooding problems, any recurrence of any flooding problems. As you know, we're working hard on those problems that we've had in the past. And finally, the Park Avenue Bridge in Mount Vernon should be opened this week. That bridge was completely replaced. We're just doing some cleanup work, and we should be opening that midweek or so. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Tim? Safety report, Ann.
Good morning. I'll be summarizing the employee and customer injuries. You'll find them in your books beginning on page 52. Our total employee injuries for 2010 are down 17.8% through October. Our FRA reportable injuries are down 8.9% through October. And our employee lost time and restricted duty injuries are down 7% through October. Our total customer injuries, are down 5.8%, and that's calculated per million rides. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Howard.
Yeah, we have one information item, which is the ferry funding MOU. Basically, this is the culmination of a long effort by Bob McClagger, his staff, the MTA staff, working with NISDOT and other parties to fund the ferry service. Bob, can you just give a very quick summary, and then there'll be a subsequent action with respect to the procuring the services with New York Waterway in a minute. But just give a very brief summary.
As Howard mentioned, we have been working with our partners at New York State DOT, and it also has involved significant support, as always, from Congressman Hinchy and Hall to identify funding to continue our Haverstraw-Ossining and Newburgh Beacon ferries. The agreement we've reached with NYSDOT provides funding for 2011 and 2012, and the agreement lays out a framework for also when the funds become available for funding for 2 additional years. So this is potentially a 4-year agreement between us and NYSDOT that would fund the services through 2014. The services, as in the past, the services are being funded through a mix of state and federal money. We're looking at about $7 million over the next 2 years to fund both ferries services. As we've discussed in the past, ferries are very important connecting services in the Mid-Hudson Valley. Haverstraw-Ossining began back in 2000. Newburgh Beacon began back in 2005, so they're actually at their 10th and 5th anniversaries now. They operate Monday through Friday in the peaks, and collectively they keep several hundred people who live west of the river from driving across the bridges and seeking parking spaces at our Hudson Line stations. So it takes some pressure off the Hudson Rivertown parking lots. For Ossining, at Terrytown would be where the Haverstraw people would likely end up, and further north at Beacon. So, as Howard mentioned, later on there's a procurement to extend Waterways contract. We're seeking the approval to go for 2 more 2-year options that are in the existing Waterway contract, consistent with the funding agreement. We're making the Waterway options coterminous.
I'm just curious, what's the cost per ride?
Standing here? Cost per ride?
Jeff, why don't we get back to
we'll
you?
get back.
We'll get back to
I'll
you
tell
what that number
Does
is.
the passenger pay anything?
Yes. No, there's a passenger fee. It's relatively slight. It's largely set by NYSDOT. In fact, it is set by NYSDOT. They fund it, so they set the fee.
So in reality, there are no Metro North funds being used.
There's very little mixed.
It's basically state and federal grants,
Correct.
of which Metro North is the applicant, for lack of a better term.
Well, the 5307 money comes through the MTA, NYSDOT to the MTA to us, and Metro North gets federal ferry boat discretionary funds that go through FHWA.
Yes, that's right.
So it's not money that could be used on any other part of the Metro North system. If we didn't have that money, we wouldn't run the system.
That is correct.
Correct.
There's a small amount of marketing money, but it's minuscule.
Okay.
Okay, I need a motion to...
No, I think that was the information. We'll get to it. So now I think we're up to the budget.
Okay.
So, again, I'll go through our budget, and then we'll need an action on this. So this is the proposed budget. Next slide, please. So first, starting with that, the budget reflects the MTA, the principles of the overall MTA plan. A couple of key tenets: no budget-driven service cuts. Metro North has made a significant contribution to the overall $750 million of recurring savings that the MTA has identified. There'll be a continuation of working with labor to achieve the $200 million in net zero savings, implementation of agreed-upon fare and toll increases, and assumes the continued receipt of dedicated taxes and subsidies. Some of the strategies that that are in our budget. One is that, and I'll talk about the first point in a minute, continues to strategies to improve service while reducing cost, spending money wisely, reinvesting our savings to fund corporate priorities. 2 categories. One is improved service delivery, customer communication. Second is to fund federally mandated programs. Continue to pursue strategies to maximize passenger and non-passenger revenue. With regard to that, we're looking at a revenue budget of $578 million, including the fare increase of ridership being up 1%, a non-passenger revenue of over $43 million, which will be up 33% in the last 5 years. Major contributors to that will be Grand Central, retail, parking, and the vending machines that we have been rolling out on our stations. Fourthly, that all our programs have been developed in concert with our partners in New Jersey and Connecticut. As you know, we have significant agreements with those parties, and we are not, unlike the Harlem and Hudson line, we need certain agreements with them to proceed with different programs. And then finally, we're going to continue our goal to become a brand name for excellence in 2013. With regard to the savings, the places, and you've seen this before, we've identified savings in a host of different areas: service consolidation, train consist reductions, reduce the workforce in administrative areas, reducing overtime, more efficient use of staff to do a number of different functions. That's all been implemented. We'll be getting larger savings from those areas in 2011 versus 2010. In addition, we have a couple of new initiatives to further save money. One is our strategic procurement initiative. So this is something we have been working on, but we'll be ramping up in terms of looking at things as to how much we are buying, what are we buying, how are we buying it, tied to joint procurements, many of which are with Long Island Railroad as well as New York City Transit. We're also going to be doing inventory and reduction control initiatives. There are two major ones. We've been working on this with MTA Audit for the better part of a year. One is to get better control in procurement processes for MFW material management. I will tell you there that later this year you will likely see our inventory go up in MFW. That's a bookkeeping exercise because we have a significant amount of inventory off the books. We're going to bring it into inventory so we can control it better. Secondly, with Grand Central, we have a whole new way of doing the inventory, which will become a just-in-time delivery program in Grand Central, reflecting the fact that there are good places to store materials in Grand Central. And we'll continue with the other reductions in concert with the MTA all-agency efforts in terms of different consolidation joint procurement efforts. With regard to providing high-quality service every day, clearly we're going to continue our critical maintenance functions. Rail cars, we've listed some of the facts there. It's a huge fleet. That a couple of the things that we'll be doing that are new is starting our M7 5-year program, also completing the overhaul of the last 30 M3 cars. Stations, we continue to do the work at all the stations, including Grand Central. We have two new programs to improve stations at the New York State stations, which include painting and a new approach to how we do maintenance at the stations. Continue all the infrastructure improvements with all those the significant infrastructure that we have across the three states. Next one, in terms of operating the service, continuing, we will be adding service to meet our growing ridership. We're going to be introducing the new M8 fleet, and here again, I've talked a lot about this on the service side. There's one point that's important to understand is that the M8s have 100 seats per car. The cars that are replacing the M2s, bless you, have 120 seats per car, so we need more cars to maintain the same seating load. That will require additional maintenance and inspection cost because we simply have a bigger fleet. We will also be looking to add Sunday service on the Upper Harlem and Lower New Haven lines. Ridership has been growing at a very high rate at these areas. These are great opportunities for us this year. So far, weekend ridership is up 10% over last year, which is a major growth. We'll continue to monitor train consists and loading standards. We're adding parking. I mentioned this before. Two major facilities are coming on board. We continue to stay focused on our safety and security initiatives, and we will be implementing the mandates required in the Federal Railway Safety Act. With regard to customer communication, this is going to be a major initiative for Metro North in 2011. We are going to do a number of things. The first thing is we have reorganized the railroad and combined all our customer service and station responsibility in one place. So that will lead to customers getting a clear message regardless of the media in which they get it. We'll be improving our service to customers via the web. We've already made some improvements so people can reach our real-time train time information sooner. We are working similar to Long Island with Cuckoo and get that up and running for us later this year. At the outlying stations, we're working to provide more real-time information. You may know we have these old ADA signs that were put up that show the dates. We'll be now working to retrofit them so they provide much more useful information next year. And then, depending on the capital plan, we'll be able to take steps further, depending on how much money we have. We're going to continue to work with New York City Transit to provide information about each other's services. We have a number of initiatives there. Continuing to work with MTA headquarters in terms of, in terms of customer service, the variety of different customer service capabilities that are being put together across the agencies. And we're also working on digital, use of digital technology, both in Grand Central and on the trains. We have a number of different concepts that we're working with MTA Real Estate to see if we can both give real-time information as well as make some money. So those are the basic initiatives. The last page simply shows these are our the budget numbers in terms of costs and as well as positions. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on the budget.
Just one quick question. Could savings be affected by consolidating the legal departments across the line? You've got legal lawyers sitting every which way, and we're pretty over-lawyered, I would think.
Right. That is one of the initiatives that the MTA has been looking at, and it continues to be something being led out of headquarters to look at the question of what the opportunities would be and what the savings are.
Terrific. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Long Island Railroad.
Oh, you have to take a vote.
We need a motion.
Move to send it to finance.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Long Island Railroad.
Okay, and we are ready with operations and safety. Ray Kenny.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Long Island Railroad operating report starts on page number 70, and our on-time performance goal is 95.1%. During the month of November, our overall on-time performance was 94.3%. Our total peak on-time performance was 93.2%, with the AM peak finishing at 94.4% and the PM peak ending at 91.8%. November's total off-peak on-time performance was 94.7%, with weekday off-peak finishing at 93.9%, and the weekend off-peak on-time performance ending at 96.6%. During November, 98.7% of peak trains met the seating standard, and 99.5% of scheduled trips were completed. 205 trains operated more than 15 minutes late. Our year-to-date on-time performance, ending on November 30th, overall, as Helena had mentioned before, is 92.6%. The total peak on-time performance is 91.1%, with the AM peak at 93.0 and the PM peak ending at 88.9. Total off-peak on-time performance was 93.3%, with weekday off-peak finishing at 92.6% and weekend off-peak at 94.8%. During the month of November, there were 4 100% rush hours, 3 in the morning, 1 in the PM. Year-to-date, there have been 42 100% rush hour periods. 31 occurred in the morning, 11 in the evening. Moving on to equipment, our AM car availability was met each day during November, and the total fleet MBDF goal of 110,000 was exceeded in October, pointing out that that is a 1-month lag in the numbers. It was actually, the total MBDF was 159,700 miles. Moving on to safety, reportable employee accidents are up 9%, customer accidents are down 10%, and the total number of rail accidents are down 53%. In terms of major events affecting performance, the most significant occurred on Wednesday, November 10th, when we had an eastbound Hempstead train become disabled at Woodside. It was an M3. It was during the PM rush hour period. It resulted in 86 late trains and late and canceled trains, 68 PM trains, and 18 off-peak trains. We did provide extra service and seating capacity for early departures for our customers on the eve of Thanksgiving on Wednesday, November 24th. That included 9 trains and other trains being built up in terms of consist. An additional service was also provided on Thanksgiving Day for people going to the parade and other events in the city. 9 westbound trains, 13 eastbound extra trains, plus other trains were built up for the holiday travelers. And during that period, we successfully implemented a no alcohol policy aboard our trains. And we did, of course, finish the final weekend of the Jamaica cutover during the weekend of November 6th and 7th, early November. And, of course, the Thanksgiving service and the Jamaica cut, we were assisted greatly by our MTA Police Department. That concludes our operating report, and I'm ready for any questions you may have.
Just curious, how many 100% restroom hours did you have last year?
Oh, I have to take a quick look for you.
You don't have to.
No, I'll get back. Okay.
Is that pretty impressive, the fact that you had over 40 this year so far?
Yes.
Just on the diesel fleet, it seems that, well, now it's the diesel electrics that are they've been doing poorly for the last couple of months. I just wonder if we get a report on what's being done with the diesel task force,
Okay.
what actions they're taking and why it's lagging, because there's been some complaints. And you see it also in the PM rush for some of these branches is bad. No, I mean, Oyster Bay, you look at the past environmental survey and you see the diesel areas get lower ratings. They always will, but I think some of it is the performance. It'd be good for us to see what's being done about the fleet.
Okay. It's a logical point at the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. The finance report for Long Island Railroad begins on page 82 of the book. I'd say the overall theme for financial for 2010, again, is ridership is starting to show a little bit of a slow rebound. But regardless, our budget position is very strong versus what we had projected. And we're doing very well in the areas of expenses that we can control. I think Kalina will talk later about that. For example, in 2011, our budget on controllable expenses is only going up 1.5%, which I think is a positive. But to start the regular 2010 financial report, I'll start with ridership. During the month of November, the Long Island Railroad transported 6.6 million riders. This was a drop of 1.9% versus November of 2009. However, one event, again, Ray Kenny mentioned, we had the second phase of the Jamaica cutover. That cost, we estimate we lost about 63,000 riders that weekend. Obviously, we believe that's the last weekend for the cutover, so I think non-commutation for December should be stronger. Commutation was actually up 0.3% compared to 2009 for November. It's only the second month all year that we've seen growth in commutation in a month, so could bode well for going forward. Monthly ticket sales were up 0.4%. The non-commutation ridership was down 4.8%, again, largely due to the cutover. Year to date, our ridership has totaled about 75 million, which is 1.6% below 2009, but much lower than forecast, only 0.9% lower than forecast. So much of that, as you know, as I've said over the months, has been included in the forecast. Commutation year-to-date is down 2.2%. Non-com is down 0.8%. For revenue, the regular budget report, again, begins on page 82. Through October, and this is compared to the mid-year forecast, through October, our total revenue of $613 million is $32 million unfavorable. 28 of that is due to just the timing of various capital projects and East Side Access material purchases. Only $3 million of it is related to ridership that I have just previously discussed. On the expense side, very positive. Through October, our total expenses of $1.4 billion are $38 million favorable to budget. Labor expenses are just about right on. Total straight-time spending thus far has been $411 million, which is only $400,000 over budget. So it's a 0.1% close to budget, which is very good. Overtime spending of $76 million is right on budget. And you recall the budget assumed an 11% reduction in overtime spending. Year to date, we spent $11 million less on overtime than we had at this point last year, and worked 256,000 less overtime hours than we had last year, which is 14% less. Non-labor is $35 million favorable to budget, a mix of contractual spending and materials and inventory spending reductions, which again is cuts to the core of a lot of the really important initiatives we've been working on, both internally and with the MTA Strategic Initiatives Department. For the month of October, our farebox operating ratio was 47.2%. For the year, through October, it's 46.1. If we exclude the unfunded pension liability, our farebox operating ratio would be 50.3%. On page 97, as we've mentioned, we've tried to make the reports as consistent as possible. Page 97 shows that our cost per passenger has been $13.98, and our revenue per passenger is $6.45. Both of those figures are just about right on the forecast. And as Kim noted, we've also done on page 98, there's a comparison to the November forecast, assuming it would be approved by the committees and the board this week. It's a very high-level presentation, but what it shows is that our revenue is right on compared to forecast, assuming the November plan is approved, and we actually have an additional $9 billion of expense savings below the November plan forecast, but we'll wait to see how that plays out for the rest of the year. And that concludes the regular ridership and financial report.
The capital program report appears on page 107. It contains highlights in November for Jamaica Cutover, Atlantic Avenue Viaduct. We completed 2 elevators as a replacement project in Great Neck. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Okay, we're going to go to our proposed 2011 budget. It's an action item, and let's see if somebody's, you got it? Good. Okay, so you will notice that we, of course, have the same 5 key elements that Howard presented for Metro North, so I'm going to kind of go through that quickly. Let's go to the next page. Here's an overview of Long Island Railroad's service statistics. We expect those to be maintained throughout 2011 with projected ridership of 83 million customers in 2011. We break that down as 48.2 million during peak periods and an additional 39.9 million non-commutation customers traveling basically in the off-peak periods. On the next page, you will notice that we highlight our customer service goals. One of our most important, of course, I always emphasize safety, security, and service reliability. We will remain focused on a safe operation, a secure operation, but we have identified some specific issues with regard to train service reliability to try to get us to achieve our goal of 95.1% for our on-time performance. We're very focused on our rolling stock maintenance, trying to increase mean distance between failure. That's a particular challenge with the diesel fleet. And, of course, we need to maintain our right-of-way in a state of good repair through all of the capital investment and operating maintenance that we continue to make. We have some key projects that I'll talk about with regard to East Side Access. We try to balance those projects with ensuring we don't impact on-time performance. But East Side Access readiness requires us as a railroad to support the work that's going on to actually build the new train service operation to Grand Central. We continue to remain focused on the work we need to do at Jamaica to improve capacity there. We have identified a number of locations where we need track enhancement. One is in Great Neck, one is in Massapequa, to better support the flow of trains for East Side Access. Let me just jump back to train information to customers. As Howard mentioned, we are very focused on delivering real-time train information for customers. The challenge for Long Island Railroad will be melding the AVPS and Solari systems and using that data in a way that produces better real-time train information for trains arriving and leaving at Penn. Let me go to our cost-saving initiatives. We remain focused on reducing overtime. Long Island Railroad faces challenges with regard to overtime controls. We've really made some progress this year, and we've reported on that separately to the committee. We will remain focused on those overtime initiatives that can help us control our costs. We also are very focused on inventory reductions. We've already saved about $7 million, and we will continue to go forward with project planning that better matches inventory buying and try to improve the cycling of inventory materials. One of the areas we're very focused on is inventory that's used on the maintenance of way, and trying to determine whether there would be improved strategies by using a more of a warehouse strategy for maintenance of way. And we'll report on those achievements throughout 2011 as we try to make those cost reductions. And finally, you'll see the proposed budget is put forth with non-reimbursable positions at $5,856 for a total operating expense of $1.197, and we would be happy to answer any questions and ask for approval.
Any questions? Okay, need a motion. Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Carried.
I just wanted to add one thing. Now that the budgets have been sent to finance, and if you look at the numbers relating to the cost per passenger, which is the issue that I know we talked about a couple of months ago, I'm hopeful that at the January meeting we can have the report by the two railroads as to the discrepancy is the incorrect term. The difference between the cost per passenger on Metro North and the cost per passenger on Long Island Railroad. Looking at the two budget options, you can tell basically what the differences are, but a more detailed explanation I think would be very helpful, especially as we move into 2011. So I look forward to that, having that report next month. Thank you.
Helena, one quick question. In the 2011 final proposed budget, what is the total headcount for administration?
Mark, do you have that breakdown, or can we?
Well, I could say that there are roughly about 700 non-represented employees, of which the most of them would be in administrative positions. There is a in the committee book. Let me find that page.
Page 93.
Yeah, let me go to that page.
119.
93, I think.
Oh.
Page 93. Right, you'll see on page 93, this is an example. Of course, this is October 2010, but much of the administrative reductions that Helena mentioned have already been implemented this year through workforce reduction. So you can see that there are about 650 staff assigned to the administrative area.
And Mark, that's the number more or less that is embedded in the 2011 final.
Pretty much.
Budget.
I mean, there's some reductions that are still.
I'm going to jump in. You can go to page 119, and it has the full breakdown by category. Yeah.
Got it.
Correct. 628.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Chief.
Good morning. We had a very good November. For November, Long Island Railroad was down 25%, 9 crimes versus 12. They were down in every category for the month, and they're down in every category year to date. Metro North was down 40% for the month, 6 versus 10. They were down in each category for the month as well. And system-wide, for November, we're down 30%. Which just leaves us up 7% for the year, plus 20 index crimes. Any questions?
Chief, the only thing, I know, Helena, and you saw it in the customer survey, the issue of security at the parking lots. Now, I fully understand that in almost all cases, we do not own the parking lots, which is a problem, but be that as it may, I was wondering if next month or sometime in the next couple of months, you could give us some idea of MTA Police's relationship with the Nassau or Suffolk, or in some cases, the village police, where it's located in a village, as to opportunities we may have to increase security at those places. Because obviously on the railroad itself, we have total responsibility. But once somebody goes off the railroad into the parking lot, it becomes a smorgasbord of responsibilities, unfortunately. And if you could give us some idea of how we could improve that, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. I could talk about the coordination between, Nassau, Suffolk, and the
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael.
Good morning. The work on East Side Access, I'm going to just separate it between Manhattan and Queens. In Manhattan, the contractor working on the 50th Street vent facility completed the installation of the concrete deck ahead of the holiday moratorium. So that's one thing off the checklist, and work within the street will resume only after the first of the year. The contractor has also completed demolition of the final building and has started rock excavation at 50th Street vent station. The tunnel contractor, Drogado's Jadlau, continues preparatory work ahead of the launching of the TBM for the last run, and that's proceeding, and mining should begin by the mid-January. Other work in the towns and caverns continues with blasting taking place at multiple locations. We are looking carefully at the schedule of the contractor, and in fact, we are meeting with the president of Drogados from Spain. He's coming especially since I was kind of dissatisfied with their progress lately, and this contract is on the critical path, yet we are looking at any potential changes to speed up the work, and they will be coming to meet with me before the holidays. In Queens, the soft-ground tunneling contractor continues to ready the open cut excavation in preparation of the delivery of the first of the tunnel boring machine that will be delivered actually to the site this month, and with the expectation that the actual mining will happen sometime at the beginning of March. That work is proceeding rather well, and the contractor is doing all the work necessary for us to be able to proceed with the work. In addition to that, the Harold structures, this is the one that is highly dependent on the Amtrak, is moving forward, and we expect to receive all of the approval needed, and this time for the contract one, sometime by mid-January. But the work is proceeding, and actually the addition to a specialty consultant to do quality control helped us a lot in our dealings with the Amtrak. Working along the Northern Boulevard, this is the $90 million, 120 feet little tunnel on the Northern Boulevard, is continuing successfully by underpinning the elevated New York City transit lines that went without a hitch, and right now we are proceeding to install the horizontal ground freeze pipes. All the area under there will be frozen before we start any excavation. That is really the progress on East Side Access today. Any questions? Yes.
There's a procurement today and modifications to the Perini contract for Harold Structures. Is that supposed to help address the Harold Structures Part 1, some of those issues, or it has nothing to do with that?
Just in a moment.
It's on page 152, the modification.
Now, this is actually, we are adding another mini or actually it's a tunnel, a utility tunnel that is being bored in order to provide, in effect, the ability to decrease the impact in the operation of both Long Island Railroad and Amtrak during the work. So this is an additional tunnel that is actually a mini tunnel that is going to be driven through. So,
but we're still waiting for resolution of the Harold Structures Part 1 issues from. It says that the result. Yeah. So
this is a result of a lot of the work with Amtrak. Okay.
Right. Okay.
But this is there are still a few pieces that they're supposed to fall in place, and that would happen sometime in January.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we have an action item, Mike.
Okay. Dave?
Good morning. The action item today, we have an action item today for the addition of a project called the additional elevator for the East Side Access Project. This elevator is paid for by a Freedom Grant and will provide additional access to the new East Side Access Long Island Railroad concourse.
Any questions?
So move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
This is a grant from the federal government that is administered by the New York State, I think by NIMTEC, if I'm correct, and there are various applicants. It's kind of a competitive grant to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. It's a $2.45 million grant.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Helena? Procurements.
Okay, Long Island Railroad has 3 procurements in this month's package. The first is a non-competitive procurement in the amount of $440,000 to Progressive Rail for replacement parts, and we ask for your approval.
Need a motion?
Move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And the Long Island Railroad has 2 competitive procurements, one which covers all agencies in the aggregate amount of $192,000 for chemical analysis used on an as-needed basis for environmental work, laboratory testing, and the second is approval to award a competitively bid miscellaneous service contract to White and Tool Supply, $89,000 for a repair of tools. We request your approval for that.
Motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And there are no ratifications in this month's package.
Howard?
Okay. First, we have, with respect to joint multi-agency procurements, we have 2 of them. One is a non-competitive procurement to authorize Metro-North and Long Island Railroad to purchase sole source OEM replacement part for our various rail fleets. The total cost of that is not to exceed $35 million. There are also 2 competitively solicited service agreements as well, which I will get to in a minute. We also have one other non-competitive, which is the purchase of a wreck crane for $1.4 million. Our wreck crane is past its useful life, and this would be to replace that. So I guess we need to first move on the non-competitive.
Motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, on the competitive, we've already talked about the extension of service with New York Waterway, and I'll mention as well that we have one for tie plates, which is for Metro-North and Long Island, and this is we basically together have come up with an alternative way to use tie plates and reuse the old tie plates that will save both railroads a significant amount of money. So I'd ask to move those.
Move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Now we had one emergency ratification to Oryx for the purchase of 12 wheel sets for our BL-20 locomotives. We needed them to keep them in service during November.
Motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Michael?
We have 4 competitive procurements. The first one is for the URS Corporation for $51,567,367, and this is a modification to allocate funding required for the continuation of the program and CM services along with general condition work as required. And this particular procurement is actually adding funds to something that has already been approved by the board, and I'm just asking for the ability to continue to utilize funds within that amount allocated. The second one is is a 2.458 million, and this is the thing that Ira has mentioned, and this is in order to allocate dollars to provide utility a tunnel to improve the ability of the railroads to operate and minimize the cost during the potential shutdowns during construction in the future. There is a third one that is for $5 million. This is to Granite Trailer Frontier. And this is a part of the work that has been undertaken in the launching pit area, where there was prior to that, at least was supposed to be completed by pile construction that we defaulted. And this is for work to repair the existing slurry walls to address additional potential problems as they are occurring. We have in the past asked for money to do that in a couple of occasions. We hope that this is the last time we come to you as we're getting to the bottom of the pit. We are now, in the final stages of fixing all of the things needed, and that has been a reoccurring situation, and at this point, we believe that we have reached the final point. In addition to that, there is another procurement for $700,000 to increase an allowance to perform jet grouting along the interior and early access chamber. This is at the eastern end of the same area where we are actually with a different contractor, Chevron Kiewit, the joint venture, working to create an underpass on the Northern Boulevard, and this is again due to the same exact situation that occurred before. That is the fallout of the pile construction.
Okay, any questions?
I have a question on number 4. Chavone pleaded guilty to defrauding the MTA. What steps have been taken to recoup for the MTA any monies? The $20 million fine has gone entirely to the United States. What steps have been taken, if any, as against Chavone for defrauding the MTA? What steps have been taken in terms of the kind of actions and supervision that will be provided as to Chavone?
I actually going to answer only the part that has to do what we are doing to going forward, and I would allow our general counsel that is not here to answer that, and I think that you should address that to them. Chavone on all of the projects, irrespective if they are the lead or not on a contract, they're paying to employ an independent body to make sure they monitor their compliance to the MWB, and that is done voluntarily by them, and this is normally the process that we will follow in all our contracts anyway.
When you have a clear pleading of guilty to a fraud, it seems to me that there's a greater obligation in terms of policing people who commit those kind of frauds, not just in the area of the minority activities, but the kind of activities that need watching.
I raised that same issue with the chairman last week. It is my understanding that a portion of the fine is actually going to the MTA Inspector General to recoup his costs for the investigation. I raised the issue with the chairman as to what additional funds could be coming to MTA itself. He had asked the general counsel to review that, and I'm hoping we can get a report on that on Wednesday. because obviously, I mean, I was going to almost vote no on this modification. If we could have kicked them off the job, I would have kicked them off the job, except Mike would have had a heart attack because there is nobody else to do anything in that regard. And so it was of great concern to many of us at that time, and the Inspector General has indicated that he is continuing his review of not only these two matters but other matters to ensure that our rules on minority and women business activity are done correctly. What I don't like to have happen is that companies like Chavone and others make the fine a part of the cost of doing business, and that is unacceptable here. It may have been, I'm not talking about what might have happened before, it's unacceptable now, and if I find, and I'm sure yourself and Susan, the chairperson of the committee, have been very strong in trying to ensure that the rules are done correctly.
Just would like to add one fact that our outside inspector that we had on the job, the oversight, the one that actually led to this particular event. That means we at MTA, and this includes the people that we have employed as well as the IG, were the one that actually uncovered that. So this was not something that was done from the outside, but actually by self-policing ourselves, we were able to do so.
I congratulate you.
Okay. I need a motion. I need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Okay, our next meeting is Monday, January 24th at 8:30 a.m. I need a motion to adjourn. Any opposed? Carried.
Yeah. Michael, when I see you next time, we'll both be out.
But unfortunately, I'm going to see you when I come and get my clothes.